We are at a crossroads. For 30 years, the console war was a simple math problem. You bought a box, it lived under your TV for 5 to 7 years, and the winner was whoever shoved the most teraflops into a plastic shell for $3.99 and sold it to you. And honestly, usually the strongest console actually never won the console war. Go look that up. But as we sit here in 2026, looking at the leaked blueprints for the PlayStation 6, the radical pivot of Microsoft's Project Helix, the math is finally broken. The $400 console, that's dead, with the Switch 2 being the least expensive at $450. The 7-year cycle, that seems to be a memory. And the most shocking part, while Sony and Microsoft were bleeding billions trying to build the ultimate gaming PC in a box, Nintendo was sitting in the corner playing a completely different game. Today, we're going to do a total autopsy of the industry. We're breaking down the leaked PS6 silicon, the Project Helix Windows hybrid architecture, and how Nintendo, the company everyone called outdated for 2 decades, actually provided the blueprint for the entire future of the upcoming console war. This isn't just a spec sheet. This is the story of how traditional consoles are dead and why the wild card winner was the only one who kind of saw it coming. Let's start with the giant in the room, Sony. If you look at the internal leaks coming out of Mark Cerny's camp, the PlayStation 6 is an admission of guilt. For the first time in PlayStation history, Sony isn't leading with raw silicon power. They can't. The cost of a 2 nanometer wafer production from TSMC has skyrocketed. If Sony tried to build a linear successor to the PS5 using traditional brute force hardware, the PS6 would have to retail for over $8.99 just to break even. So, what is the strategy? PSSR, of course. That's PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. It's an upscaler. Sony is officially exiting the native resolution era. They are looking at NVIDIA's DLSS 5 and saying, we need that. But being Sony, let's make it proprietary. The PS6 isn't going to be a powerhouse. It's an AI machine. The rumors suggest a dedicated NPU that takes a 1080p image and reconstructs it up to 8K. And what would be the edge? Well, this isn't really innovation. This is Sony desperately trying to catch up to a market that left them behind. Now, when I say left behind, I'm not saying that the PS5 didn't do well. But how many first-party games did Sony really put out for the system? I've got a video on that if you want to go check that out. But they are adapting NVIDIA's AI strategy and Nintendo's efficiency over power mantra, all while trying to convince you that $700 is a mid-range price point. They are the last defenders of the box under the TV. But even they know that those walls are closing in. They've seen the numbers. They know that a dedicated handheld is no longer an accessory. It's kind of a requirement. And let's look at Microsoft. If Sony is the last guardian of the console, then Microsoft is the first defector. Project Helix is the worst kept secret in Redmond. It's not an Xbox Series Next. It's a Windows-based hybrid. It's the Steam Machine 2.0, but with the full weight of the Xbox ecosystem and Microsoft's billion-dollar, maybe trillion-dollar behind it. Microsoft has finally realized they can't beat Sony at being the PlayStation, so they're doing something radical. They're becoming the bridge. Helix is rumored to run a specialized version of Windows 12, capable of playing your Xbox library and your PC library natively. It's not even rumored anymore. Asha Sharma pretty much came out and said it outright. Think about the irony here. Microsoft spent 20 years trying to make the console as standardized as possible, and now they are abandoning it. The closed garden, it's gone. Why? They're going to embrace the chaos of the PC market. And all of this, honestly, is because of the Switch. They saw that people don't want to be tethered or don't care about being tethered to a 65-inch OLED for every single gaming experience. They want to start a game of Starfield on the train and finish it on the couch. Project Helix is Microsoft's admission to basically that their version of the console as a distinct hardware category is over. From now on, it's no longer consoles, it's just gaming hardware. And who proved that? Who spent 7 years showing the world that teraflops don't sell units? Hell, who spent 20 years? Yeah, that's right. This is where the story gets interesting, because for years, the hardcore crowd mocked Nintendo. They even called it the casual market when the Wii came out. Remember that? Oh, it's just that. But the Wii outsold the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 hand over fist. And when the Switch came out, it's just a tablet. It can barely do 1080p 60 frames per second. It's for kids. The same old story. Well, look at the bank accounts. In 2026, Nintendo is sitting on a mountain of cash flow, while Sony and Microsoft are laying off thousands of developers and shuttering legendary studios. Now, guys, it is what it is. Nintendo won because they were the first to stop competing directly with Sony. They knew that was a losing effort when they went head to head or even tried to be comparable with them. It was a downfall. They realized that if you own the IP, if you own Mario, Zelda, and Metroid, you don't need to spend $500 million on research and development for a new GPU every 5 years. All you need is a platform that works, something that's, quote, good enough. But it's deeper than that. Nintendo provided the blueprint for Project Helix, if you really think about it. They provided the blueprint for Sony's handheld rumored console that's coming out. They proved that the future of gaming is lateral thinking with withered technology. The Switch 2 didn't need to be a PS5 killer, it just needed to be a Switch. By sticking to their guns, Nintendo forced the big two to pivot towards their territory. Microsoft isn't building a PC hybrid because they want to. They're doing it because they have to, if they want to survive in a post-Switch and PlayStation world. Sony is looking at Nintendo's bank account, realizing that their ultra high-end strategy has a ceiling. There are only so many people willing to spend $700 on your box. But there are hundreds of millions of people who will buy a $450 device that's good enough. Let's talk about specs, the real tech. This is what you guys probably tune into the channel for too. Why is this happening now? We have hit the diminishing returns wall. The jump from 8-bit, 16-bit to 32-bit was a miracle. And then we saw the 128-bit jump. It was huge. The jump from standard definition to high definition was a revolution. And really, from there, the jump up to 4K to 8K, it's diminished. Most people can't really even see the difference between 4K and 8K unless you really just pause an image and zoom in and look at the background. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I can see it now. Developers are struggling. It takes 5 years and $300 million to make a modern day AAA game. And anything that actually uses the PS5's power, by the time that comes out, it's the next generation. It's a suicidal business model. And this is why I made that video that 40 frames per second is the new standard. And it's weird. It's becoming the new 60 frames per second. We're seeing more and more games targeting 40 frames per second on a 120 hertz display because it's the middle ground between the feel of a high frame rate and the visual fidelity of 30 frames. Honestly, it's ironic. Nintendo, maybe they didn't see this coming, but their strategy, it's almost like they knew that power was a trap. If you build a console that requires a $300 million game to look good, you eventually run out of developers. And what if the game flops? Hello, Concord. Hello, Highguard. By keeping their specs modest, Nintendo kept development costs manageable and kept their output high. Whether these games are your cup of tea or not, you can't deny the sales. Microsoft and Sony are now trying to retrofit this logic into their newer high-end machines. That's what AI upscaling is. It's a cheat code to get high-end visuals without high-end hardware costs. It's the future. So, where does that leave us? If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, the console was a sacred object. It was a promise of a specific experience. But in 2026, that promise seems to be fading. Sony is becoming an AI upscaling service company. They're in their own lane. Microsoft is becoming a Windows gaming ecosystem. That's its own lane. And Nintendo is just being Nintendo, just different and weird. The wild card, if you will. And the wild card winner isn't the one with the most teraflops. It's the one who understood that gaming isn't always about the strongest hardware. It's about the friction. How fast can I play? Where can I play? And who can I play with? Sony and Microsoft are spending this entire generation trying to copy that homework while pretending that they aren't. And that's fine. If I was a competitor, if I was Apple, I'd look at what Samsung is doing and try to put that in my systems, however long it takes, and amplify it, right? Sonifications and Xboxifications, whatever. But Sony and Microsoft are spending it this next generation, and they've realized they have to carve their own niche. They are moving towards Sony is moving towards the handheld hybrid and efficiency first models because the old war is over. They can't keep spending that kind of money. There's just not going to be a market if you do. There will be a video game crash again. Nintendo didn't win by being better at the console war. They won by making the console war irrelevant. When they came out and said, we're no longer competing with them, we're just competing against the movies, we're competing against eyeballs and iPads and mobile phones, they were ahead of the game. They really were. The Wii was, in fact, as Iwata called it so many years ago, a revolution. I do want to hear from you because the next generation is going to be an interesting one. Are you buying into the PS6 AI future? Does Project Helix sound like the Xbox that you've always wanted? Or is it just a glorified PC with an Xbox label on it? And most importantly, did Nintendo actually change gaming by refusing to play by the rules? Or were they just lucky? I'm checking the comments every hour. I'd like to reply. Let's get into the technicals. As always, thank you for joining me at Starflagmedia Gaming, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.